Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about a fairly blockbuster report in today's Washington Post. FBI held off investigating Trump for more than a year. So the headline is, after January 6th, it was a full year or so until there was a green lighting of the White House folks and Trump in particular as potential subjects in the investigation, and implicitly now they were overly bureaucratic and conservative. Merrick Garland, Mr. Institutionalist, should have or could have gone faster if you look at all the kind of criticism pouring in the Twitter sphere and elsewhere. And now we're up against it somewhat because the cases are being brought, but at least with the bad luck of Eileen Cannon in the Southern District of Florida, but will then not actually go by November of next year in the election, etc. So it's the kind of, some report like this, it was, I think, coming. It really, for people who know DOJ and FBI, was not particularly surprising, although extremely detailed. And it's the kind of flip side of what had been a lot of talk and focus in the time before the Smith investigation really began to gather speed of, is the DOJ dragging its feet? Why aren't we seeing charges, et cetera? So let me try to give you my take. I think I'm, generally considered favorably inclined to DOJ as an institution, and certainly to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and that's all true. On this topic, after being agnostic for quite a while, I did come to say I think it's taken a little bit too long. So it's nothing, kind of contradicts things I was saying and the like, but I think there will be a cadre of commentators who, what do you guys have to say now? So let me tell you what I have to say now. All right. It's very fine-grained in its reporting, but the basic sweep of what Carol Leonnig and her excellent colleagues at the Washington Post say are pretty well known, and it goes like this. So January 6th happens, and there's Garland isn't even in yet, but there is an immediate resolve even under the guy named Michael Sherwin, who is a holdover, though a career person, to go after the people on the ground. And when Garland comes in, he gets a briefing from Sherwin and says this has been remarkable progress, as it had been. And then thereafter, the report gives a lot of different junctures in which they don't talk to Garland or his deputy Lisa Monaco or the head of the FBI, but they do talk to some line prosecutors who express some frustration in DOJ that they weren't going after Trump sooner. So let me just give it to you from their point of view. January 6th itself, Garland came in and I think made it clear, as had Tom Sherwin for that matter, nobody's off limits. It was very clearly understood that there's no putting to the side the very prospect of a prosecution of a former president. On the other hand, everyone understood this is what looks different now. That is a tall order. It is stepping on a hornet's nest. It will appear to be hugely political. The only proof you need of that is that Trump last week said, I'm going to get a special prosecutor to investigate Biden. And everybody saw it for what it was, which is naked political partisanship. And there was an institutional bias. Maybe they should have reconsidered it in light of the importance of the whole sprawling investigation, but the bias of the DOJ, and it it's effective and fair in most cases is to work from the bottom up. One of the things you do as you do that is as you get more culpable people, they cooperate, and you are always going for the top, which here always meant the up to and including Trump if the evidence showed it. But, remember, we're talking about 1,000 or more marauders on the ground, biggest case in the history of the department, a total all hands on deck effort to prosecute, beginning with trespassers and up to seditious conspiracy, which is a big deal, a controversial statute, but they, have punched that ticket and called the melee what it was, and reacted accordingly. Now, back in the what do we do about the top down? I think some combination of wanting to go from the bottom up and wanting to not appear to be partisan and political, and just resolving infighting or differences in the somewhat plodding bureaucratic way that DOJ does, means that Trump wasn't squarely on the table for some time, though he was well before that year. I mean, it was over discussion. Then he made it easy for Garland and the DOJ by announcing his candidacy, which required the appointment of a special counsel who did, it's true, go pedal to the metal and faster than had been moving. But think about just that factor for a second. Right now, to the extent we feel, part of what's going on, let me put it this way, is that people are not generally aware of how long it does take a case, an important, complicated case, to come to trial. Right now in my hometown, Pittsburgh, there's a capital case being tried against Robert Bowers, the shooter who perpetrated the massacre in the Tree of Life synagogue. That was in 2018. It's taken almost 5 years to bring that. It's a complicated case with just one actor. DOJ acts slowly and methodically. But when you put that normal, slow, methodical process up against something that we did not know, right? I mean, and would have blown us away to think. Maybe would have blown us away. Certainly didn't know it. Donald Trump is the leading presidential candidate. And that does make it exigent to try, if possible, to have a verdict in play by November 2024, so the American people have a sense of whom they're voting for. If you vote for them and then it turns out he's a very serious felon, that's obviously not as good as knowing it in advance. But that combination of circumstances, A, was murky at best, and B, it's a question. Do you somehow, should the Department of Justice have been saying in June 2020, well, if he runs for president and it takes a while and he has pauses and he gets a certain judge or whatever, we're going to have trouble. So we really want to hurry up in order to be sure there's a verdict by the 2024 election. That in and of itself, I'm not dismissing it as illegitimate, but it's kind of funky. So should they have acted in that way? Let me try to be clear. It's only what I've said before. They were very methodical, top up the melee first, and it's not like a case where it was 100% or was super clear that in fact the things that they put off from the article weren't going after Trump, but going after Roger Stone or people in Trump's circle, alliances with some of the people on the ground. So their normal approach plus attending to the biggest case then in the Department of Justice history, 1,000 defendants, plus some inbred, hyper caution about not being political, knowing that it's all with DOJ, not wanting to give it to the White House. So being very methodical that way and sort of having on your shoulder the weight of, are you polarizing the country? And the way DOJ works made for a methodical, slow process, and one that I've said, dragged on a little too long. But the big chunk of time before they really turned in earnest to Trump, to my mind, was had to be expected. You couldn't be investigating him based on what we knew in, say, March. We learned little by little by little by little from the January 6th, not just from the investigation of DOJ, but also the January 6th committee, also some very good reporting. And then Mar-a-Lago happened. Trump acted like an idiot, self-inflicted wounds, and as a result, the DOJ was able to cross the Rubicon in deciding to prosecute a former president, and was also able to in its big investigation, to pull the trigger on seditious conspiracy. You add those two things up, which didn't exist before, and it starts to be apparent what's the institutional holdup. Prosecuting or investigating Trump for seditious conspiracy makes all the sense in the world. All right, so we have a period of time that's a little over a year. I see the criticisms that, maybe it could have been 9 or 10 months, though you don't want them actually with their eye on the 2024 election. But people shouldn't, I think, that, I'm sure I'll be, defending this view in the public sphere, and you can see if I do it persuasively. But people shouldn't, I think, be saying, why weren't you investigating Trump as of February? There are good reasons why that would have been more organic, even in a DOJ that could have been somewhat more nimble. All right, so that's my take on the big piece in the Washington Post. This is going to be jotted over for quite some time, but I wanted to give you my out-of-the-box analysis of it. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.